Testing, testing. Yes, we are live. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be back. I appreciate everyone who supported. Are we streaming live on the page? Wait a minute. Let me refresh. Make sure we're there. Yes, we are. Thank you, everyone. If you're online now, please tune in. Give people a chance to catch up. It's been a week. Last week, but we're going to make up for it this week. We know we have a good addition, a great person on this week who's going to bring a wealth of information with him. I'm not going to say the name yet as usual. We're going to wait on that, keep you in suspense for a moment. All right, we're going to give people a few seconds to catch up. Um, a few seconds to log in. All right, some people are tuning in already. If you don't have it, we're sharing. All right, thank you. Hey, Shante, thank you. We're going live. All right. I want to also give credit to our sponsors, Be More News, Mr. Donnie Glover. Thank you so much for the platform, Black USA News, again. But most importantly, thank you for all you do, Donnie. Honor me with the award. Thank you. If I didn't say it on the show previously, I had to have the plaque live. You do so much in the community. You recognize so many people, man. One day you're going to get blessed in a way you can't imagine. So I appreciate all the love and support you give to me, you give my family. And I want to brand also our little co-sponsor. Not gonna say our little, they're a known entity. They get more coverage than I do. Think Black, um, Kelsey Parker. Shout out to your brand, all you're doing in the community with Black businesses. So this week we're going to talk about something different. We talked about raising capital. We talked about protecting your intellectual property. We've spoken on the moving beyond just the small scale scaling and adding team and adding players to your team. But what we frequently don't talk about is the pivot. How do we move from sometimes a career that's successful into our vision, our dream? Or how do we move from that step one in our business to that step two? How do we elevate or go into our passion? And when I thought of that topic, I thought of no one other than my good friend, my brother, Dr. Damon Smith. How you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent. I'm excited to be joining you tonight.
This is when I think about pivoting. It's not many people I say born winners, but you've always had that attitude from the beginning. You've always been an inspiration. I've always admired your grind and your perseverance, your stick to itness, that tenacity all along your career. But what's really fascinating is you went from working, having a family established, to med school, inspiring your wife, who also goes and pursues a career in the medical field. She's a nurse as well. And then you go from being a surgeon to opening a business, and that probably is exponentially more successful than and more fulfilling for you than working inside of the field as a surgeon, which is already remarkable. Yeah, this is one of my smart friends right here. This is my smart buddy, one of them. So if you could tell us a little bit, tell us the name of your company, and please, I want to hear more about like how you got started, the story behind getting it started.
Sure. As Quay said, my name is Dr. Damon Smith. I am owner and co-founder of Trusted Hearts Home Care Solutions. We are licensed by the state of Maryland. We provide care for seniors and adults with disabilities, serving the greater Baltimore metropolitan area. So that includes Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard, PG, Montgomery, as well as Anne Arundel. We even have a few clients sprinkled on the Eastern Shore. And so, as Quay said, I started off um, actually after I graduated from college. I came back to Maryland, to Baltimore, which born and raised Baltimorean here. Came back to Maryland with a degree in biology, with nothing that I could really do except work in the lab. And so that's what I did. I got a job working in the lab, actually testing salad dressings, um, barbecue sauce, different condiments, right? And so it was a job. It was a 9 to 5. It wasn't nothing really exciting about it. That was my first job out of college. transitioned to a company where I became like a supervisor for their microbiology lab. And we were testing drinking water and wastewaters and groundwaters. And I did that for 5 years. And over that time,
Sounds
had a
exciting.
family. What was that?
It sounds exciting.
No, it wasn't. It, it was, I worked the evening and night shift. It wasn't exciting at all. And that's what got me back to my dream. I grew up always wanting to be a doctor, right? That was what I dreamed about as a young boy. When anyone would ask, I would say, I want to be a doctor. And, at the time, I think I was influenced to want to be a physician by, I like to use two mentors or two models or two inspirations. The first was my dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would see my dad get up and go to work every day. He would put on scrubs. And so I thought because he wore scrubs to work that he was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I later found out he wasn't a doctor. He was like a manager in supplies at Shock Trauma. So they wore scrubs too. And so, but I associated the scrubs with medicine. And then, of course, growing up watching the Cosby Show, Bill Cosby was a sort of model for me at that particular time as an obstetrician gynecologist.
At the time.
That was my exposure to medicine at the time, right? It's funny, and I don't want to go too far into it, but a lot of people I sort of looked up to, Cosby, and then, Ben Carson, who motivated me when I was in college. Those were inspirations to pursue my dream of becoming a physician and not to settle for mediocrity or to use my socioeconomic status as an excuse for mediocre achievement. And so those were the people I sort of looked to say, okay,
But were you rich growing up? Did you grow up wealthy?
Absolutely not. I grew up in Baltimore City in the projects of Lexington and Sarris. And so, we don't talk about it often, but we experienced what it was like to have grilled cheese sandwiches from the thick box of cheese that you would get from the state, right?
Oh, I had to come.
I've had some powdered milk in my day. I've had some eggs, look, in all honesty and transparency, my parents worked, but we still grew up in tough times. It was if you asked for some airs, you probably wasn't gonna get airs for Christmas, right? You were gonna get the best that they could give. And we came to appreciate that. We came to appreciate being a family, and we grew to love one another. And that was what was most important. We didn't have all the flyest clothes or, the flyest shoes. And, for a while, we caught the bus everywhere or we walked. That's what we did. Because that's what we could afford. And so that's what we didn't know we were growing up in poverty. We just knew we was growing up in a household where we loved each other. We were in a community where we knew each other, and that's what it was. And so when people saw me, they were inspired or gravitated toward me because I was one of those ones who chose to go to school. So I didn't go to zone school, right? Southwestern zone school. I went to Poly. Right. So that's a little bit different from the neighborhood. Everybody in the neighborhood is not going to Poly.
Yeah.
They go in the South. And so that was understand that, I made a decision to pursue education and focus on my education. And at that time, a lot of things came easy education wise because I was smart. But, that was a choice I had to make within myself that I wasn't going to necessarily follow the pathway of everybody in the community. even though I saw the things in the community and my eyes got big, just like everybody else, I wanted the nice cars, I wanted the nice clothes and all those things too growing up.
But
And so,
interesting enough, you had the patience to wait for it. Where it's amazing how many adults don't have the understanding that you have to be willing to surpass your short-term desires in order to get to your long-term desires, your long-term goals. They often conflict.
look, let me tell you something. Anyone who wants to be a physician will have to learn something called delayed gratification, because it's a journey. It's a journey. You go through 8 years of schooling after you graduate from high school before you even have a chance to practice medicine. And so it's a delayed journey, but the rewards outweigh the the hardship. For me, I think you mentioned that I worked, and I was in the workforce for about 5 years in the lab. And then I was like, I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not satisfied. I have a young family at the time, and I'm like, God, man, this is not working. This is not what I want for my life. It's not how I saw my life playing out. And so I was like, I need to do something different. And it caused me to revisit my dreams of becoming a physician, right? And so for me, it started with prayer. I'm like, God, this isn't working for me. I need your help because I'm unfulfilled. I'm working hard, but I'm not seeing the level of prosperity that I thought I would see with a college degree. And so I need a change. And so that's where it started for me. So the first pivot, since this is a conversation about pivots, is pivoting from, working in that workforce to, okay, now I really want to pursue my dream of becoming a physician. And that started with prayer, for real. If I'm being honest, it started with prayer. And so my story, and we probably don't have time to get into everything, but I'll give you a snippet. My son at the time, my youngest son, he had just been born, so he was an infant. And so I would get up early in the morning because I am, I'm feeding him, I'm changing him, the wee hours of the morning. And so during that time, that was a great time for me to have a personal time to develop a relationship with my spiritual father, right? And so I would talk to God during that time. And so I received specific instructions. And, I had to tell my wife, when I say I received specific instructions, I mean, I wrote it down like word for word. And my instructions were, go to Nashville, right? Number one, go to Nashville, find an apartment somewhere to live. Number two, turn in your 2 weeks resignation. And number three, trust me that I'm going to open the door to medical school.
God said, quit your job. I can imagine that didn't go over too well to a mother of how many kids at the time? 3 or 2?
3. It's 3 kids.
3
children.
kids, 3 small kids. And God says, quit your job. All right. This is getting interesting. Come on.
See, now that's for me. That's for me. Now,
that's not everyone here.
Some people, God is not going to tell you to leave your job before you have another job or you start a business, right? Let's make that clear. Sometimes you have to be like, I think he said quit, but let me make sure I got this, certain. So for me, I had already started the process of applying to medical school, right? But I hadn't heard anything. And so it was an act of faith for me to show that I was believing what God said, that I was going to go to medical school and become a doctor. So me going to Tennessee to find an apartment was a show of my faith to believe that. Me turning in my resignation, that was a show of my faith to believe that I'm going to actually have an opportunity to get into medical school. And so when the last thing was like, just trust me, that was easy. So telling my wife was difficult because I had to tell her, like, look, we're going to move to Nashville where we don't know anyone because I'm going to medical school. Now, I'm fortunate that I have a wife who believes in the integrity and character of the man that she married. And so she didn't put up a fight. She was like, if that's what it's going to be, she trusts the God in me. Mm-hmm. And so she's ride or die. She's like, let's make it happen. Let's do it. Let's get it done. And so we go to Tennessee to look for apartments. Now, my credit isn't at a point where I should be looking for anything. We being real, right? Transparent and vulnerable. My credit isn't at the point where I should be looking for anything. But God opens the door for me to get an apartment. We signed the contract the same day. Like, you know, this is 6 months before school starts. We signed a contract and they like, it's yours. When do you want to move in? I'm like, this is crazy. Nothing's ever happened for me like that quickly. And so, you know, I come back home, I turned in my resignation, and that was that. And we up there celebrating. We had a party. We packed a U-Haul truck, and we're on our way to Tennessee before I get the phone call that I've been accepted to medical school.
Wait a minute. You do all this, and you hadn't even been accepted into medical school yet?
Dude, so when I tell you,
I know
you know,
the story. It's funny every time.
Dude, faith without works is dead, right?
Love it.
So, hey, everybody can't walk that type of journey, you know? Some people have to be, you know, you have to be built for it. And I think that I'm built for it. And so, yeah, we packed the U-Haul. Literally, I was talking to one of my good friends, and I said, dude, I haven't even received a call to be accepted. And he's like, look, he said, for real? He said, man, you just go ahead down to Tennessee. And if you had to stay there for a year, because that's how long at least you get a job, you stay down there and then just come on back. Nobody won't even know what happened. They just think you just went away for a year. And I said, all right, bet. And so, you know, I told my wife, and my wife was like, let's do it. And so we're packing the U-Haul truck, literally. I can tell you the exact date. It's July 3rd, this is 2004. And it's like, okay. And as we're packing the U-Haul truck, the phone rings. Mr. Smith, this is Dr. Mosley from Meharry Medical College. I'm like, hey, Dr. Mosley, I remember you, we met during the interview process. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm packing a U-Haul truck. He said, you packing a U-Haul? I said, yeah, I'm headed down to Tennessee. He said, okay, great. We'll see you when you get here. And that was how I got my acceptance. That was how I got my acceptance, dude. And that was the beginning, that was the beginning of my medical journey.
Hold up. So, you think this is good? Wait till you hear how the business starts. Now, tell me what motivated the business, because I remember you shared the story with me. This is my good friend, so I have some insight, but I want to make sure we direct it. You basically were so focused on work. You had an incident with your family, and you wanted to be more home with your family. Tell us about how that transition went, how you got the inspiration. And by the way, he and his lovely wife worked together. You talk about miracles. A husband and wife working together and running a business together. That takes a lot of that speaks volumes as well. But just tell me the story. I need to get her on here separately. Go ahead.
I'm sure she's watching, so I have to say, hey, sweetie. But look, so I was actually, my wife, she came home one evening. She was frustrated because she was actually, at this particular time, she was working in a nursing home as an assistant director of nursing. And she was
Mhm.
so frustrated by the level of care she was seeing in the nursing home, and the fact that um, she could not reprimand the staff because of
Mhm.
because of the union. And so there was so much she could do to reprimand the staff and discipline them. And so she came
Mhm.
home extremely frustrated. And, we talked, and I'm like, okay, what can we do differently? How can we make a difference? And she's like, this is what I want to do. And I say, okay, great. I got your back. If that's what you want to do, I got your back. And so what she did was she went out and she tried to start the business herself with a friend. And it didn't work out because it wasn't supposed to work out with her friend. Right. And so I'm still going through training and I'm working and I'm in the hospital at 5 every morning, leaving at 9 o'clock every night. And so during this time, what I realized was that I was never home. And so I had no idea what was going on in my family. And we were having a challenge with my children at the time, specifically my daughter. And so I was like, man, this is not how I envision things. I'm actually doing something I enjoy doing. I'm doing something I love, but it's a matter of priorities, right? And so I had the opportunity to take a leave of absence to do research. And
Mhm.
while I was home for that, my involvement with my wife in the business sort of took off.
Mhm.
And so here I am. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go back into medicine and into surgery, but I'm just going to help my wife get this business off the ground. And then I'm going to go back. And God was like, no, that's not the plan I have for you, son. And so imagine you trying to do everything in your power to get back to what you believe is the best plan for your life. That's where I was. I was at a position where I'm trying my best to get back into what I think is the best plan for me. Every door is like being
Mhm.
closed in my face. Like, no, and it's like, that's not what I have for you. So it's like, okay, all right, and here we are, another conversation with God, right? And so for me, that's how God speaks to me. I told Quay when I got on here, I'm like, Quay, look, I know this is about business, but anytime I talk about business, for me, somehow God creeps into the conversation. And so I said this. I said, I don't know what's going on, Father. And so God reminded me of something he said to me in the early morning when I was with my son. He said, if you pursue me, I'll place you in your destiny, right? If you pursue me, I'll place you in your destiny. So that's what I did. I turned my focus toward him. And so every step of the way, he's been ordering my steps. And so, my wife and I, we decided to go into business and we started this company, Trusted Hearts Home Care Solutions.
Mhm.
Now, mind you, I'm coming from a medical background. I have no business background. I don't know anything about business. And here I am in a position of running a business. Now, early in business, you learn a lot of lessons and you learn a lot because you make a lot of mistakes. Now, the question is, when you make a mistake, do you choose to learn from it or do you choose to keep making the same dumb mistake over and over and over again? Right? And I'm not calling anyone, please forgive me. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I made some dumb mistakes early on. But what we did was, we started our business and we're in the healthcare space and we had to hire people, right? And so we started hiring people to care for our clients. And
Now I
what
have to
we
ask you this
learned.
because we have a business group. I hate to jump in, but I
Okay.
know the audience wants to know. Did you start off with a ton of money? Because you're a doctor coming in. Everybody's not a doctor. Did you start off with a ton of money when you got started?
Absolutely not. We started off, it was so bad, right? Like I said, I had some poor habits early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course we weren't saving anything. We're living paycheck to paycheck. And we started a business. And at the time, my wife, she was still in the working in a nursing home, and I'm home running the business because I'm on a leave of absence. And so no resources at all. We were initially taking the money she was making from the nursing home and putting that into the business until she came home and said she was quitting because she was frustrated at the nursing home.
Oof.
And so, she comes home. It's so funny. She come home like, look, I'm not going back. I'm quitting. And I'm like, are you crazy? We just started a company. We just started a business. And you talking about you quitting, and Christmas is this month? Like, it was wild. It was so crazy. But she left her job, and we decided to do it together, right? And so we are in a townhome in Howard County, and we have our office is our dining room, right? We have one computer, we have one desk, and we have one chair that we had to share. Right? So we both couldn't work at the same time. And so that's where we started. And we started hiring people. And you have to imagine, when you start a business, we were really only making enough to pay our people. And so we had a hard decision, right? When the revenue comes in, do we pay ourselves first, or do we make sure that our staff is paid? And so we chose the path of integrity, right? The, and so we chose to make sure our staff was paid. Right. And what that did was that meant we started with a lot less. So yes, we have a business bringing in some revenue, but we're not making anything, because what you learn once you start a business is there's total revenue, right? And then there's an operating expense that comes out of that total revenue, right? And then there's that net. And once you got to that net, we were in the red. It wasn't black, it was red. I'm looking at the background of the screen, right? And it's black up top and it's red down the bottom. That's where we were. We were in the red.
You weren't alone. We were in the red. We were so red it was almost burgundy, but go ahead.
Look, we were so red that our first office is where we were living, and we lost that space. We were evicted.
Wow.
We were
From
evicted.
Your house?
We were evicted.
Wow.
And my car, I got a car when I was going through training. I got an Audi A6. It was sweet. I was waiting a long time for that, right?
Yeah.
Man, I was parking that car around the corner. I was parking it in all types of places because they was looking for it. And so not only did we lose our home, I lost my car. We lost our car. Mm-hmm. And so this is the challenge.
And you were a doctor, so we can give context. You were a doctor, a nurse.
I was a doctor.
Pursuing
my
your
wife's
dream.
A nurse. And we lose our house, we lose our car. And I'm still a man of pride because I'm still a father. I still want to be a provider. And so I'm like, look, I'm going to take the little bit of money we have and we're going to move into a hotel, because I was too prideful to ask for help. Right? So let's touch on that for a second. A lot of times our pride can get in the way. And one thing I've learned in business, it's okay to ask for help. Right? Because if you're really smart, you'll know that you don't know everything. And there's always going to be someone smarter with more skill or expertise in a particular area that you can lean on if you're willing to open your mouth and ask the right questions.
We have
And
not, because
so,
we
dude, I'm prideful. We're in a hotel, and that didn't last long. Didn't last long at all. And we still end up back at square one.
Mhm.
Right? Back at square one, where my wife, she always tells me we weren't homeless, but in my mind, I'm homeless because I don't have a home and I don't have a car. And so we move in with my in-laws. And thank God for them, because, they didn't look at me like, dude, you're a doctor and you can't support my daughter and your children. Like, that's how some people would look. And they never looked at me that way. And so I'm very appreciative of the respect that they gave me as my wife's husband, right?
Yes.
They still showed me respect. They understood that I was still a good father, even though I was having a hard time at this particular time. And we were still running the business. And so 2 years I'm living with my in-laws almost. Well, it's a little over a year. I wouldn't say 2 years, a little over a year. I'm living with them. We're renting a car from Enterprise for 2 years. So every month we would have a different car. So if you asked me back then, I could probably tell you about every mid-sized car that there was, every compact car, because it wasn't a big car. We had a small car.
Yeah.
And we had to change it every month because
Like, what year of the business was this? Like, what year of the business would you guess this was?
this was year 3. This was around year 3, 2, 3. So we're in year 3 now, right? And we're making enough now to rent a car, right? And help with some bills at my in-laws, but we're not paying like all the bills, just enough to help with the bills. And we're renting a car. And so we start looking for office space during this time. And so this is around 2013 to 2014. So this is around year 2 of the business. And so that's what happened. But during that time, we're steadily growing. We're adding, staff. We have clients coming in. We have a mission that we believe in, right? Our mission is simple: is to help people live better, healthier lives through care you can trust, right? That's our mission. That's our focus. That's what we've put our time in. That's what we're preaching in the community. That's what we're telling our staff about. Every conversation, we're here to help people live better, healthier lives through care you can trust. Care you can trust. That's our tagline, right? That's it. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're preaching. And we believe in it. And so, I mentioned that we're living with our in-laws, and you gotta understand, I'm a doctor, my wife's a nurse, and at this particular time, 2 of our children are with us. The oldest is living with his dad, and we're all sleeping in one bedroom on the floor. So you got 4 people sleeping on the floor in one room.
Like 10
And
years
we
ago.
did that for a year. We did that for a year, but we did it because we believed in what we were doing, right? We believed in what we were doing. And so that's why we did that. And so I know when people hear that, they're like, that's crazy. How do you go from that? So the question is this: how do you decide to continue pursuing a business when you're going through such adversity and challenge, right? Because you could easily go back to the hospital. You could easily go back to what you used to do, right? But I couldn't do that, because the reason I was doing what I was doing was because my priority was my family. That
But
was
you
my
could have,
priority.
the question was, yes, you could provide for your family as a surgeon, but you got the assignment to finish the business. So it wasn't just the pivot that I think people focus on making a switch. But in addition to making a switch, is having the fortitude to stick with it, even when it doesn't look like it's working.
I think you hit the
See,
nail on
this
the
is what
head.
you're getting. Yeah, you're giving the audience what they need, because I know there are people listening who have multi-million-dollar ideas stuck in here, but just having the courage and understanding and hearing more people like you tell the story of how to make it happen. This is the encouragement they need. I gotta give a couple shout outs real quick. LaKinda Camper, wait, dying to get you on. We got to get that date set up. My cousin Derek out there, Rhonda, see Pastor Sean, whole lot of people out there. My honey, Adrian, hey, thanks for tuning in. Got to get my shout outs. Now we're back to the top. But
No,
I
it's
miss
all
you
good. It's all
getting.
good.
But
You got you.
Shantae, yeah, his honey, I got to give a shout out. My sister
No,
Shantae.
but
Now I want to
you
pivot
make
a
a
little
good
bit
point, Quay.
if we can. Yeah, I want to pivot a little bit if we can to get the business stuff, the business knowledge out there. Right now, how many, and I want to give context. This is not to brag, this is to give context. Approximately how many employees do you have?
Okay, right now we have approximately 65 to 70 employees on staff.
Great. See, I'm giving context because I'm bringing you all people who are out here doing it at a high level. And it's important to hear that. So when you get the questions and you present your questions, which you will have the opportunity to put out here in 15 minutes, get them ready, start putting them in the Facebook feed. But I want to hear, if you were to look back and say, what were 3 situations of great adversity that I faced, and how did I attack them? Pick 1 or 2 to say you want to share the scenario, something that you dealt with that took you to a point of maybe thinking it would break you in your business, but you actually overcame it, and how you did that. Could you share 1 or 2 scenarios with us?
Sure. So one thing with the African American community is I grew up and I was taught that credit was a bad thing, right? And usually we teach that because, as parents, we usually handle our credit poorly. And so, we tell our kids, that's not what you want to do. And so, as I mentioned early on in business, we went through the early stages of what it looks like to be in business where things don't automatically hit off the jump. Mm-hmm. And so I used to be proud of the fact that I could say I paid for everything with cash, right? And I had to learn that in business, it's okay to use other people's money to get things going. But you have to establish your name. Like your character means something, right? Your name means something. And so if you have a poor name in the community, or if you have a poor name at the bank, if you have a poor name with the creditors, it makes it difficult to go and get revenue to help you build your company and scale. And so I had to learn the lesson that for me, it was okay to use other people's money to help scale my business. And so what we did early on, because sometimes it can be challenging to get a bank to buy in, we used third-party lenders, right? And the reason we chose third-party lenders was the fact that I could use my business revenue. I would not have to take a hard hit on my personal credit. I did not have to personally guarantee it, but I could get the revenue or the capital I needed to help me start the process of scaling my business. And so that's one of the things that we chose to do early on, right? Something else I will say is also, it's okay not to know everything, but what you want to do is find people that can help. Find people with wisdom, find people with expertise to help. I started off, and I still run payroll, but I started off doing everything. And so as my business began to grow, it became more of a hassle or a challenge because I didn't have the expertise to do everything I was supposed to do. And what I mean by that is, and I'll be, I'll try to share as much as I can. Tax wise, when you pay people, there's something called, you know, an employer tax, and there's you know there's a when you pay your staff, they have, of course, their gross and their net. And so early on in business, it was so hard for us to make sure we were paying all those things, right? We would make sure that we're paying our staff, and we're paying their tax, we're paying Medicare and Social Security, right? And then paying the employer tax on top of it, and you're paying, state unemployment insurance and workers' compensation and general and professional liability. All those things you have to have in place to be a legitimate business, because you
Yes.
never know when something is going to happen that you didn't foresee. And so it's important to have the correct insurances in place as you move through that process. And so those were lessons I had to learn. In the beginning, I tried to do it all myself, but I realized I couldn't. And so bringing on ADP, and I'm not trying to advertise for ADP, but ADP is someone we use to help us with our business and making sure we were paying, our taxes on time, paying unemployment on time, paying federal and state wages on time, all those things. And so that was important. And let's see, the last thing I will say, you said pick 2 or 3, and so I'm gonna try to limit it. But the last thing that has really helped me is really taking the time to make sure that my mission and my vision and my core values align, right? That's something you have to do repeatedly, because as you scale and as you grow, you'll be tempted to just bring anybody on because you need bodies, right? And in the business that I'm in, we need people to provide the services that we provide. But what I learned early in business is that not everyone is going to align with your mission, and not everyone is going to have your values. And so you have to make a decision. Is this person worth keeping on my staff when their values don't align with my values? Right? Now, early on in business, I would have said yes, because we need people. But now we're at a point where it's okay to let someone go, because we have a high standard. And if you aren't willing to meet our standard and provide the level of care that we expect, that our name is known for, then I'm sorry, but you can't work here. Like, if you're not going to show up on time to go to work.
Yeah. You're talking about the next pivot. And I'm glad you went there, because the first pivot is moving into it. The second pivot is realizing that you have to scale and add people. But the next pivot that you deal with is moving from those who were willing to those who are most capable. Because at first we get whosoever willing, and then we realize that just because they were willing and they were on board, we need the highest grade of talent to move to the next level. And that often means paying people more, vetting them better, and you letting go of personal attachments and saying, how do you serve the greater cause of the vision, the mission? We got to talk about that separately, of how to make sure those align. We got to have another conversation about that, if you don't mind, one-on-one, because I like that, because I never thought of it that way, but it makes sure your organization runs succinctly. I can imagine doing that. Man, we are getting close. If you all have questions, please post them in Facebook. Everybody's trying to text me questions to ask Damon. I'm going to, Dr. D, I'm going to ask you a question someone threw out there. They said, what are the greatest things that you would say that you need to look for if you're working with your spouse and making it work? I'm going to try to rephrase that because it was a long text and I tried to rephrase it. I'm going to start putting people out who text me bashfully. Start putting you out there, putting your name on it. But that's the question.
Wow. So it's a great question because not everyone can work with their spouse, right? And so I'll give one thing, hopefully, so we can keep it sort of compact and short. But you have to have defined roles, right? You have to have defined roles when you're working with your spouse because it's easy to bring work home and it's easy to take home into work, right? You know, one of the things, and it happens from time to time, I can't say that we are perfect with this, but we have gotten better over the years of not bringing work home and not taking home into work. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's easy to have a work conversation over the dinner table. Like, you know, did you get this done today? Or did you do this? Or did you do that? And it's also easy to take a home conversation into work, meaning you had a disagreement at home, right? Because no marriage is no all marriages go have some type of disagreement from time to time. That's a reality. That's put that out there. Everybody knows that. But taking that disagreement into the office space can really put a challenge toward the business because it makes it difficult to get work done. And so, you know, like I said, having defined roles and having a space to go to when you're upset. So I have my office, my wife has her office. If she wants to close her door because she doesn't want to be bothered or see my face, she can do that. If I want to close my door, I close my door, but somehow she can always see through the window. So she's always peeping me. But you know, we have defined roles, and you have to do that early on in business because it really helps. She gets upset with me all the time. She says, nursing is my thing. Stay out of it. Let me do my job.
So,
And
question,
so,
do you step into the nursing environment, into those things and make decisions there, or do you pretty much give each other domain over their areas of over their specific areas of expertise? Because sometimes when people define partnerships, they define them as if everybody is making democratic decisions on everything, where I find partnerships are often the most dangerous business form to use because there's so little governing in a partnership. So it requires a self-governing. How do you all operate? Do you have set areas where she operates and has final say, and you have certain ones in certain areas? How does that function?
so
From a
for
partnership
us,
standpoint, not necessarily husband and wife.
yeah. So for us, my responsibility is operational, and she handles the nursing aspect of it. And so usually what happens is she has the final say when it comes to nursing, unless, you know, there's something that I have to jump in on. But usually it's she has the final. I see her comment. She says facts. She has the final say. And so that's what most of the time, to tell you the truth. Now this is me. This is not everybody because everybody can't do what I do. When I tell people when they come to work for us that you have a boss and then you have a real boss. And so they need to understand that I'm the boss, but when it comes to it, she's the real boss, especially if you're in nursing, right? If you're in the nursing department, she's going to be the one that's going to handle every aspect of nursing. And so if you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, she's responsible for that. If you're supposed to be providing some type of care, she's responsible for that. If, you know, the client calls with a complaint, she's usually going to hear that. Now, there are times when she will, you know, it will move up the chain to work to me if she can't handle it. But I'm going to let her handle that because my function is, okay, how do I keep this business running smoothly? How do I make sure we're constantly generating revenue? How do we continue to scale what we're, doing, and how do we expand? And so that's my focus. And so
Mhm.
from the nursing aspect of it and caring for people, that's our focus.
Got it. So you all have complementary skills, and the part where it helps it work is the fact that you're not both holding the hand of the plow at the same time. Each person has their own delegated thing that complements each other in partnership. This is good because a lot of people are doing ventures with other people. This is not just for married folks. This is for two friends going into business or two general partners going in. Having designated roles helps tremendously. It's interesting, Damon. And one venture I went into, it was challenged because we were both very talented, but we were both very talented in the same area,
Yeah.
and it didn't complement. And he was great at the same thing, and it didn't work because what we needed, we both had the same thing to bring to the table. What we needed was the opposite of us to bring into the venture.
Yeah. A lot of times you step on each other's toes when you're bringing the same things to the table. And so
Yeah,
it's great to have someone who complements your skills and your expertise.
lovely, lovely. We're gonna try to squeeze in one more question. And Lakenda Camper asked the question: is why did you continue to do payroll of all functions in the business? I find it
Well,
interesting because I find in our community, one of the issues is we feel if we don't hold the money is the one piece that we find a hard time delegating, but also we put a lot of emphasis on trust. And what I've learned is if you have good systems and infrastructure in your business, trust becomes less of a factor. These systems provide the infrastructure because when you grow, I can't imagine that Elon Musk trusts all his employees. You have thousands of employees. Trust is not scalable to that. So can you comment on, why did you choose to maintain payroll of all functions?
sure. So right now it falls under my purview under operations. That's really the only reason. I don't anticipate that I'll be doing payroll forever. Um, that's something we will add as we continue to grow a payroll department.
Mm-hmm.
But operationally, it falls under my purview. We have a director of nursing, we have a director of client and caregiver services, and I function as the director of operations. And so, and payroll is something that I'm good at. I find it's easy for me to get it done, and it doesn't require a lot of my time because of the systems we have in place. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can sit down and I can get payroll done, over the course of a morning, and it's done for the week. And so no worries when it comes to that.
I also find that a reflective time on performance as well. Like I don't
You
like
know,
letting my finger off the pulse of what's going on in the operation. And at a certain point, you can't manage by observing. You don't see
so
everybody enough.
you know what payroll does for me, Quay?
Mhm.
Payroll allows me to know who's working for me, right? Because I'm not always there during the interview process or during the onboarding process.
Mhm.
So it allows me to know everyone who's working for me. And it also allows me to know all of my clients. And so because we're a service business, we have caregivers that work with specific clients. So I know if you ask me about any client we have, I can give you their name, and I know how many hours of service they get every week because I
Mhm.
see that when I do payroll. And so it allows me to keep a record of that so I know where our business is. And so that's one of the reasons why I do it as well.
That's good. That's good. All right. I have a question for you. This is not coming from the
Okay.
audience. I have a question for you in general. What does do you find that you're where you need to be, or do you ever feel that you'll get there?
I believe we'll get there. Um, we're in a good place, but I believe that the vision is bigger. And so I'm one of those people that believes comfort is like a four-letter word. And so when I get to a place of comfort, I know transition is coming. And so I get prepared for it, right? I never want to be complacent,
Mm-hmm.
and I never want to be satisfied. Like, that's just I I'm not the type of, I don't want to eat, drink, and be merry, because that's not my vision for me or my family. And what that means is not that we can't enjoy some of the fruit of the labor we put in, but what that means is that we don't get comfortable and we don't get complacent. We're continuing to pursue the vision that God has put before us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I believe it's bigger, and so it requires me to keep putting one foot in front of the other and moving forward. But also, I always go back to what I said, 30 minutes ago. God said, if I pursue Him, He'll place me in my destiny. So, as my focus is Him, no matter how big it gets, I'll find myself there, but I'm not there yet, right? And so that's my thoughts on it.
We often paint this picture of the life of a Christian or a person who has faith as being one of impoverishment. How much has your success and your business been able to sow into the ministry or purpose that God put in you?
That's a great question. And this is something my wife and I, we talk about often, because I believe that God has blessed our business because we've been obedient to um, give cheerfully, right? And so we make it a point to, my wife has a ministry where she does a retreat for women.
Mm-hmm.
We have something where we've done a retreat for married couples,
Mm-hmm.
and then we do a conference every year. And so to do all those things requires resources. And we'll talk about the marriage retreat because that's something my wife and I, we've done together. The
Mm-hmm.
reason we've been able to do things like that is because we run a successful business and God has blessed it. And so, you know, I'm of the mindset that if I am willing to give what I'm given, I'm blessed to be a blessing. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I look at it in simple terms. In simple terms, I'm blessed to be a blessing. And
Mm-hmm.
so when it comes down to it, you know, God is going to continue blessing my business because He knows I'm not trying to hoard it all to myself, right? That's the mindset of eat, drink, and be merry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to build my storehouse so I can store everything and I'm just going to sit back and chill,
Yeah.
right? And rest on my laurels. And that's not where we are. I'm of the mindset of Joseph. Okay, if he gives me instruction to build a storehouse, I'm building it to store for abundance. So when there's famine in the land, I have the
Mm-hmm.
resources to provide for those who need the help and assistance. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's how we move when we do things.
That's key. I think overall, what I find with interviewing the people who are really winning is there's a greater purpose than just money. My purpose for money ended in my late 20s and it was unfulfilling, but the purpose is to help and impact as many people as possible. And I think we look at the kingdom being in church, but what we realize is we have to extend the kingdom beyond the church walls, and the business world is not isolated from the kingdom. It is a key part of the kingdom. So, man, I appreciate you, my good brother, my friend, for coming on and dropping. This is one of my favorites. It's hard picking because I'm only having my friends on, but this one is special because we have these discussions, and to hear this shared with the audience, I can't tell you how grateful I am. I think a lot of people are blessed from this and are going to benefit and they're going to grow their businesses because there are principles to it. So you're hearing the real deal. You're hearing the source of it. You're hearing how he did it. You can give us a closing words, man, that you can leave us on. Give us a minute closing words. You want to plug your business, how to find you, etc. Please share.
Sure. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to join you tonight, Quay. As I stated before, Trusted Hearts Home Care Solutions. We're providing care for seniors and adults with disabilities. So if you can find us online, trustedheartshcs.com, or on social media platforms with Trusted Hearts or Trusted Hearts HCS. But this is what I'll leave you with. Before you do anything, trust God with everything. And so that's what I'm living by right now. Now I'll leave it at that.
You might as well just take the mic, not even drop it, slam it. I'm gonna have to go upstairs and we're gonna have to talk about that one after this, because that's rock solid. Damon, I thank you for coming out again. I thank Donnie Glover, Be More News, Black USA News, for allowing us to get on the platform, sharing this with their viewers, their audiences, our junior sponsor, Think Black, and all the people that tune in each week. We greatly appreciate it. This is we have a few more weeks left. Like we said, we're doing a finite number. We're doing 8 of these, and then we're going to bring it to a close. As we discussed, as we're doing these, doors have already opened for things that are next. And it was my intention only to do 8, but we're going to be obedient, do these, and see what it leads to. Thank you again. Bless your business. Abundance, I know it's coming. Keep spreading, keep being impactful, sharing the wisdom, adding value to our community, helping our seniors, giving people jobs. Y'all just a power couple. You exemplify that. So I again, I salute you and Shantae. Shantae, sis, we gotta talk. We gotta get you on in some way or another, because you have a business. You have businesses separate from this as well. We want to hear about. So thank you all for tuning in this week. Next week's gonna be good too. So make sure you mark your calendar 7 p.m. next Monday. Have a good evening.
Good evening.